Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Happy Wife School show. So excited to be here as always. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me, see me okay, everything's coming on or coming through all right. And we will get started on today's topic. While I'm waiting to make sure you guys can see me and hear me, I just want to take a second, as always, to thank the moderators in the chat today, Phil, Steve, and Evo, for keeping it a constructive conversation. So guys, make their job easy and be respectful in the chat. Keep the conversation on topic and respectful and clean. And then I'll take a look at the chat. Evo sends me questions and comments. So I'll take a look at that at the end of the stream today. And let me just pop this up loud and clear. Karen, thank you so much, Phil. And thank you to everyone who is joining me for 3 benefits of sex for women. The reason that I want to talk about this today is I've been seeing a lot of comments this week popping up on some of the videos that I have done recently about sex and our challenges and issues with sex as women, men's challenges and issues with sex in their marriage to a woman. And so I've been seeing a lot of comments, and I've seen a lot of comments with men sharing that their wives had told them that they would be perfectly fine if they never had sex again. I see that pop up again and again. I've heard that a lot from women. When I was struggling with this in my marriage many years ago, those words came out of my mouth or some version of that. And I wanted to share a few others. I want to share a few other comments that I see about how women have shut down to sex and the reason or excuses they give their husbands for why they are no longer having sex or don't enjoy sex or aren't having sex as frequently as before they got married. So I thought I would share those comments. Some of them are very sad. Some of them are almost laughable that these are the excuses we come up with. And where we're going to go first is looking at the why. What's the real why? From a lens of taking responsibility and accountability for ourselves, ladies, I want to give you a red-pilled why to really understand the truth of what's going down and what's going on that you have shut down to sex. And I'll share from my own experience. And then we're going to get into the 3 benefits of sex for women. So this episode is very much aimed towards women who want to be red pill, want to see the truth of what's going on, want to see themselves as the problem in their marriage so that they have a path forward to be empowered to change. And they just haven't had the right context or had the right path presented to them to work on these issues. And today, the issue around sex and being shut down to sex. I've done another video. You can go check out 5 reasons women stop wanting sex. So that's another angle that I come from. Today, we're going to go a little bit deeper and look a little bit more at the emotional and psychological experience that's happening in us as women that we shut down to sex. So before we get into all that, I want to share some of the comments with you that men have shared of what their wife has said to them about why they no longer want sex. One of them, I couldn't find it again to copy and paste it, but one of them said something like, very shortly after my wife and I got married, she looked at me and said, "Aren't you glad we're married now so we don't have to pretend that we like sex?" That's something a woman said. Here's another one. My wife told me after years of no sex, when I asked her why, she said, "You are my best friend, and the idea of sex with my best friend is gross," which is why she was only interested when we first met. That's an actual excuse that a woman gave. Another common one, she says that that her hormones are always low. Another comment from a man of what his wife shared. I've been reading about sexless marriages, and eventually during an awkward, heated conversation, I asked my wife about it. I said that sexless is usually less than 10 times a year. And then I asked my wife, how many times have we had sex in the last 10 years? Her answer, If it was once, it was one more than I wanted to. It's almost unbelievable how entitled we can feel as women to even let something so crushing and heartbreaking come out of our mouths. But that's exactly what happens. We feel entitled to say things like that. And we're going to get more into the why of that here in a moment. Just a couple more. I asked my wife once why we don't have sex anymore, like before we got married. She looked me straight in the eye and told me, I don't really have to do that anymore now that I've got you. And then she followed up with that she is quite happy to not have sex again for the rest of her life. And then a couple more comments, very similar to each other. My wife said I'm 50 years old and I shouldn't have to have sex anymore. And another one similar to that. My wife told me at age 50 she is too old for sex. So see, these are some of the excuses we come up with as women when we have shut down to sex. And something I talk about a lot on the channel is can't victim versus can't take responsibility. All these comments that I just shared with you, all of our excuses as women for why we have shut down to sex come from a place of living in camp victim. If you want to know what I mean by camps and camp victim versus can't take responsibility, please go check that video out. I posted it recently about the problem with couples counseling is the name of the title, or does couples counseling work? And I go in depth into camp victim versus camp take responsibility. But all of our excuses of why we're shut down to sex, why we feel we'd be perfectly fine to never have sex again, are coming from a place of being a victim and putting the problem and the issue outside of ourselves and blaming our marriage, blaming being too busy with the kids, blaming our hormones, blaming our past experiences with men, or past relationships. And that keeps us in a place, women, of being very, very stuck and not being able to move forward. And I know, because I was in a place where I was telling myself that story, that it'd be okay if I never had sex again. I didn't truly feel that way inside. I knew that that was not healthy for myself or my marriage or my husband. I knew that it was not in integrity with myself or my husband, and it ate away at me inside of me, and was this constant weight and burden and pressure and anxiety that I carried around with me in my life. There was no solution forward and no path forward or way out of it, because I was in camp victim. I blamed my husband. I blamed my marriage. I blamed my past experiences with men. I blamed my upbringing. And when I would go to therapy, when I would read the books, all of those stories got reinforced, that it reinforced and kept me stuck, living in camp victim with no solution and no way out. So when we live in camp victim, and again, I'm talking to the women today, and of course the men can benefit too, to understand what's really going on and the why, so you can get out of the cognitive dissonance and brainwashing that it's something you've done or something you're not doing that has caused your wife or your partner to shut down to sex. I want the men listening to know what's really going on from a psychological and emotional place that isn't taught anywhere else. What I'm talking about today, you're not going to find from a sex therapist. You're not going to find in couples counseling or working with even an individual counselor. So it's a red pill for women and a red pill for men to understand what's really going on. So when we live in camp victim as women around sex and being shut down to sex and living in those stories that we don't want to have sex anymore, it's not important to us, we don't really need it. Living in camp victim, what that creates psychologically and emotionally is that we have no control in life, that life happens to us. And when we have that experience and blaming our husbands, blaming our marriage, blaming, having kids, blaming our upbringing, blaming our childhood, what happens from that place of living in victim is we really believe that life happens to us and that we have no control. From that place, we check out of life. As women, we describe that being checked out of life internally as being numbed out. I used to feel incredibly numb inside of myself, and the women that I work with, who my message speaks to, and they want a way out of this prison we trap ourselves in, express being checked out in life as being numbed out because we feel we have no control. There is no path forward. And from that place and being numbed out and being checked out, which are synonyms, we don't want to feel anything. We don't want to feel anything at all. And so we shut down internally. So how that plays out in our relationship with sex in our marriage, and for some women, they feel this way and they maybe aren't married or even in a relationship. But what happens when we're numbed out internally, living in Camp Victim, the reason we shut down to sex is because we are numbed out to life. The reason we are shut down to sex is because we are numbed out to life. When we numb out to life and numb out within ourselves emotionally, then that gets reflected in our relationship with sex. Sex puts us in a arena with our husbands to have to actually open up and feel. And if we've shut ourselves down to life, we've numbed ourselves out to life, we don't want to engage in anything that is going to cause us to have to feel. We don't want to feel anything good or pleasurable. We don't want to feel anything negative or bad from that place. So we effectively numb ourselves out. And so not only, this is really interesting, and this was my experience, and many women have shared this with me also, is not only do we, because we're numbed out to life and then numbed out to sex, not only do we numb out emotionally to sex, telling ourselves we'd be fine to never have it again, we also physically numb out to sex. We also physically numb out to sex. So we become numb down in our female sexual anatomy and have turned that part of us physically off. And so it cuts off any interest, desire, or pleasure. When we have a wall up to life, a wall up to ourselves, a wall up to sex, it cuts off any interest, desire, or pleasure. Another way to look at this is something I've talked about before, and what I teach from moving from Camp Victim to Camp Take Responsibility is really understanding the psychology of relationships. That my experience, the psychology of relationships is that my experience of every relationship that I have is a reflection of my internal emotional state. We don't think about it this way often, but sex is another relationship that we have. We have a relationship with sex. And so if every relationship or every experience I have of every relationship in my life is a reflection of my internal emotional state, and sex is a relationship, what that means is that if I'm shut down and numb to sex, that means that is a reflection of my internal emotional state of being shut down and numb to myself and to my life. As I began to see this, I was 9-10 years ago, it was a huge relief to me because it gave me a solution that as long as living in Camp Victim, my being shut down to sex was because of my husband, because of my marriage, because of my past, because of my upbringing, because of things and circumstances that had happened. Again, there was no solution. Understanding that my relationship with sex and how shut down I was to it was a reflection of me and just how I felt internally in myself, in the relationship with myself. That was a really, really good thing, because that was an actual experience that I could change. As long as it was my husband, it was my hormones, it was my upbringing, my parents, that put the control outside of me, the power and control outside of me, being a victim, with no ability to change it without those external factors changing. To see the deeper issue of what was going on, that it was how shut down I was to myself, that I was shut down to sex, then that meant I could learn how to open back up to me and build a connection and relationship with myself. And then as a byproduct of that and benefit of that, being able to open back up to sex. That me being shut down to sex was actually just a symptom of the relationship that I had with myself. I got very lost, as I know a lot of us as women have gotten very lost, and then men get sucked into this vortex too. I sucked my husband into this as well, as I was struggling with this, is we want to work on the symptom of sex. So we want to work maybe on the physicality of it and finding different positions. We want to work on our hormones, or we want our husband to change things and he's not doing it right. And I need him to change how we have sex so that I can enjoy it again. All of those things put the power and control outside of ourselves, ladies. But if it's me, this is what was such a relief to me. If it was just me, and that the real problem was me being numbed out to life, numbed out to myself, and shut down to myself, and that I created that, then that was something that I could solve. And then I didn't have to work on sex anymore, because, and I know a lot of you ladies relate to this, the more that I tried to work on sex and tried to work on sex with my husband, the bigger deal it became, the more overwhelmed I felt, the more out of control of the experience that I felt, and the more I just felt doomed, that it was never, ever going to be resolved. And that's a lot of pressure and overwhelm that we live in within ourselves. And then we're working on the wrong thing and going around in circles, and we might see relief and change short term and short lived, but then we find ourselves right back to our walls being up to sex, doing whatever we can to avoid it, not enjoying the experience of it. If you're like me, I still had sex, but I was shut down in the experience of sex and didn't enjoy it. And my husband, as a good man, can feel that. And it's really important to them that we're present and that we're actually enjoying it for ourselves. And when we're not, that's a huge turnoff and doesn't make sex fun at all. So we working on the wrong thing just keeps us spinning around in circles, and actually feeds our anxiety and our overwhelm around sex. And then what happened for me is that I just shut down further. I just continued to shut myself down further and further and further and further. So you want to know that no, it's not, you're not fine to never have sex again. That's a story we tell ourselves to protect ourselves so we don't have to drop that wall and reconnect and open up again first with ourselves and the relationship with ourselves. And then that naturally happens with sex, because that feels vulnerable and scary. And we're doing everything to avoid that because we have made ourselves a complicated mess. So it feels like, how am I ever going to figure myself out? How am I going to get there? And so we just want to stay shut down. So you being shut down to sex, just like I was, you being shut down to sex is not okay. It's not healthy for you. No, you are not fine without it, because shutting yourself out to sex is an expression of you being shut down to yourself. As women, we often say that we feel we don't know ourselves, that we're disconnected from ourselves, that we don't like ourselves. If you have pushed sex away and feel that you could go forever and be happy and quite fine to never have it again, you're keeping yourself in a place of not knowing who you are, being disconnected from yourself, and not liking yourself. It does not make us feel good. And from Camp Victim, we think we're doing it to our husbands, that because in Victim we blame and we're resentful, withholding sex is a form of punishment to our husbands because of what we feel or believe they've done to us. And you can check out my video on withholding and how we withhold sex. But the truth is, yes, we are being cruel and to our husbands and depriving them of what's important to them in the relationship. But we are also depriving ourselves. So again, we think we're doing it to our husbands, but ladies, we're actually doing it to ourselves as well. That shutting yourself down to sex and not being open to the experience of it, even if you are still having sex, you're depriving yourself of you and a very pleasurable experience that we enjoy. In that story of thinking we would be fine without it, we're telling ourselves we don't really enjoy sex, that there's nothing in it for us. But if we remember back to when we met our husbands or our previous relationships, we enjoy it. It's fun in the beginning and we enjoy it. So it's not true that we don't enjoy it. We are thoroughly built and designed as women to enjoy the experience of sex. It is a pleasurable experience. It's kind of like, as a woman, this is a woman example. As a woman, we tend to, in general, love going to get a pedicure or love going to get a massage and enjoy that experience and the pleasure of that, of getting a foot massage or getting a full body massage. We enjoy that. Sex is as pleasurable, enjoyable, in my experience, more enjoyable than that. So saying you don't enjoy sex and it's not for you and that you'd be fine never having it again is like saying I'd be fine if I never had a massage again, or I'd be fine if I never had a pedicure again. It's not true. We're telling ourselves a story and we're living in a lie to ourselves. That it is step one of re-engaging with sex. If you are a woman who wants to be red-pilled, see what's really going on, and you're just looking for a path and a way to open up to sex because nothing else you've tried has worked. We enjoy it. And that's step one to re-engage, is remembering that we enjoy it and remembering the times that we have, but that we effectively turned our switch off. Not only to our husband, but we turn the switch off down there to ourselves and are depriving ourselves. So I want to get into why we should open up to sex and the 3 benefits of sex for women, and helping women understand why you should want to open up to sex and the benefit of it and what's in it for you. Because one of the big problems is that as women, we've always had sex for the man and known it's something that we needed to do to get the relationship or the marriage, or we keep having sex in the marriage because as a chore and a duty and an obligation, and never take responsibility. I believe it is a duty and role of having sex as a wife, but it has to come from a place of having it for the experience of me, so that I don't become resentful and treat it as a chore or a burden, that it's actually something that I can enjoy for myself. We've always had sex for the man, so we've never learned as women to truly enjoy it for ourselves, not from a selfish place, but that's actually the only place we can give freely and be fully open, is to be in it because we're important to ourselves. And it's something that we do know is obviously a healthy part of a marriage, but it's a healthy experience of ourselves. That if we shut ourselves down to that, we can't be a healthy woman. I can't be a healthy woman if I am shut down to sex, because that is a healthy part of life as an adult woman and a healthy part of being married. And we all know that. We can deny it and come up with all kinds of stories about why not, but we know that's not true. And again, we are biologically made to thoroughly enjoy sex, and it's not complicated. It's not difficult. We need to, as women, stop making it a production and believing we've got to be warmed up and we need 20 minutes of foreplay and it needs to be special and it needs to be romantic and the mood has to be set. Those are all ways that we complicate it to actually not enjoy it. For me, when I simplified it and made it simple, and then it doesn't have to be this long drawn out process. The average sex lasts 7 to 10 to 15 minutes. And it's something we learn to enjoy for ourselves. Then it doesn't have to be a big deal anymore. Not to mention that sex is one of the most important things to be in integrity and commitment to your vows. And one of the single most important aspects of a marriage to show your husband that you love and care for him is having sex. And again, I have another video, Why Men Need Sex, and you can go check that out. So no one's talking about doing this for yourself and making it simple and why that's so important for you as a woman. So that's why, again, we're going to get into the 3 benefits of sex for women and looking from another angle. That there's a lot out there about the physicality, but I want to look at from the emotional place, the emotional benefits of having sex as a woman. Number 1, sex for yourself is a beautiful expression of self-love. Sex for yourself is a beautiful expression of self-love. I want to take a second to define self-love because it has been very convoluted and become very selfish in how our current modern day society talks about self-love. And I know many men out there have experienced that and are thinking, oh my gosh, please don't talk about self-love. My wife is so selfish, and everything is done from that place. So we need to understand what that is and why self-love is important and critical to be able to have love for your husband in your marriage and love for those in your life. So I define self-love as doing the things I know I need to do, doing the things I know I need to do that tell me I am important and that I value myself. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. Self-love is doing the things I know I need to do that tell me I am important and that I value myself. By depriving yourself of sex, that is the antithesis of self-love. Depriving yourself of sex is self-deprivation. Again, you think you're sticking it to your husband by withholding sex, but you are also sticking it to yourself and withholding an important part of the relationship you have with yourself to show yourself that you're important to you and that you value you. When I was shut down to sex, and even still having it, I wasn't there. I was checked out. I was very uncomfortable in myself. By staying stuck in that place and not overcoming my insecurities, I was giving myself the message that I wasn't important and that I didn't value myself. And then depriving myself of a part of my marriage and a part of life that is important to be healthy and a pleasurable, really pleasurable experience. All in the vein to stay numbed out and not have to feel anything. because I was scared and didn't want to go there. That gives us the message that we don't value ourselves. We're not important to ourselves. So we have to love ourselves enough to overcome our insecurities with sex to give ourselves a pleasurable experience. And it's an essential part of our nature as women, an essential nature of ourselves as women to have sex. It's a pretty good window into ourselves and the internal experience of ourselves as women, whether we are engaged with sex in our marriage or disengaged with sex in our marriage, to be able to see what's going on in ourselves. And so for me in my path, and I've talked about this a little bit before, sex is a critical part of getting to know ourselves as women and feeling like a woman and being connected to that experience and our softness, our femininity, our sensual nature, and our giving and caring nature. Sex is the most important window into ourselves to really have that essential experience of ourselves as women. So withholding that from myself is withholding the true experience that I have of myself as a woman. So the reason that self-love is important in a marriage is because if I can't love and value myself and show myself that, it is impossible to love and value your husband. It's impossible to even love and value your children or anyone in your life if you do not value and love yourself. It is impossible. What happens from that place, ladies, of not loving and valuing ourselves is we think it's our husband. Our husband's not loving us and showing us care and value. But we're actually projecting that onto them. That is the experience of ourselves that we're trying to shut out and not have to go into. One, because we maybe don't know to go there or don't have a path to do that. So the other side of that too is that we are incapable of experiencing the love and care from our husbands as good men. So my channel is for women married to good men and for good men married to women. And good men are very thoughtful. They're very loving. They're very caring. And when we don't love and value ourselves, we can't experience the care and value from our husbands. If you're numbed out on the inside and checked out, you can't experience the love and care from anyone. So what happens is we are blind. We blind ourselves to the love and care that our husbands show us in the marriage and then say they're not doing what we need them to do to make us feel loved and cared for, even though they are, and we've blinded ourselves to it. And from this place, especially withholding sex and withholding a love and affection from our husbands over time, the consequence, ladies, because our behaviors have consequences, they disengage from the relationship and they'll stop doing things to show their care and love. And we think it's them, but we've created that environment by being shut down. So re-engaging with sex is a wonderful way to begin to show yourself that you're important to you and that you value yourself. That's benefit number one. Benefit number two of sex and the benefit to women. Number two, sex develops fundamental intimacy in a marriage. I would say the biggest thing women say that's missing from their marriage is intimacy. And as women, when we say intimacy in general, we're talking about emotional intimacy and connection. It's one of our biggest complaints about marriage. And we'll even use that excuse of, well, I can't have sex because he doesn't provide any emotional intimacy or connection. And I need emotional intimacy and connection to be able to have sex. It's the same as number two. In order to have emotional intimacy with your husband, you have to have emotional intimacy with yourself. And if we're numbed out to ourselves, numbed out to sex, and disconnected and checked out, we have no emotional intimacy or connection with ourselves. So how can we have that in our relationship with our husband? It's impossible. So another interesting point is that we say as women that we want intimacy, but when we're walled out or walled up and numbed out, we actually don't want intimacy because it would require us to have to feel. And we've numbed ourselves out. So it's important to know that the intimacy with sex doesn't come from the physical connection. That's just the fun. That's the fun, pleasurable part. The intimacy that comes from sex is created by the emotional connection, which requires, ladies, a connection with yourself so that you can have a connection to your husband and be vulnerable to explore what you like, what you don't like in sex, and be able to share that with your husband and let him into your heart, let yourself into your heart. That's what creates the emotional intimacy in sex. You will see in the comments on my different videos about sex, you will see in the comments different things that good men have shared. And they don't enjoy sex with us when we are emotionally shut down. Good men feel our disconnection. They feel us being checked out. They feel us, pardon, not to be crude, but laying there like a dead fish. That's not a fun experience for them. Good men actually do want the emotional connection in sex. They want you to be there. They want you to be enjoying it for yourselves. And a good man will do anything to try to get you to enjoy it. But if you're not there and emotionally connected to yourself, there's nothing he can do. And it's not a fun experience. And so we have to be able to open up and have that emotional intimacy with ourselves so that we can open up to our husbands and let them in. And that's part of how you create a fundamental emotional intimacy in your marriage that as women, we say we crave. And we want to, again, from Camp Victim, say it's our husbands, that they're emotionally disconnected, they're emotionally unavailable. No, that's what we've created of how we're showing up, checked out in marriage, checked out in sex, that we push them away. And they will either keep trying or eventually they get to a point and they throw their hands up and like, screw this. And they do disengage and become distant. When you drop your walls to connect with yourself emotionally and re-engage with sex, I promise you, your husband, as a good man, as long as it's not too far gone and it's not too late, he is right there waiting for you. He's eager to connect with you. When I speak with good men, they're not Neanderthals saying, I just want sex with her. No, they want a connection. They're desperate in fighting to have an emotional connection in the relationship with you. So when you open up to yourself in that and you connect, he will be right there waiting for you. And then you can begin to have emotional intimacy in your marriage, not just during sex, but it creates it across all aspects of the marriage and the relationship. And sex is just a crucial and critical part of the marriage to create that emotional intimacy. And what you will find, ladies, is when you are engaged with sex and the intimacy of it, as a woman, you will enjoy it just as much, if not more, than your husband. Again, we are thoroughly wired to enjoy and have a pleasurable experience of sex. The third benefit of sex for women. This was my favorite of opening back up and re-engaging with sex. Number 3, you get to resolve the sexual stress and anxiety that you have over sex in your marriage. The third benefit of sex for women is you get to resolve the sexual stress and anxiety that you have over sex in your marriage. It eats away at us. It eats away at us when we are either totally disengaged from sex in the relationship, or we're having it every other week or once a month or every few months. It eats away at us internally, and we are in a constant mental loop in our head of anxiety about when we're going to have sex, when it's going to happen next. And we have a mental calendar of I've had it today. So that buys me a couple weeks, and then can kind of suppress that anxiety for a couple days. And then it just starts to amp up and build and build and build, because we know it's getting closer to the point that we need to have sex, but we're not doing it for ourselves. From that place, we're doing it as a chore and a burden. And we live in this we're in our head, it's this mental gymnastics of how do I avoid situations? How do I strategize to avoid anything that could potentially leads to sex? And it's exhausting. The stress and anxiety we live in is exhausting. And then we feel a neediness from our husband, because they're hoping, when am I going to get lucky? Is it going to happen? And then we carry this tremendous amount of pressure around with us, not to mention the pressure we carry around anniversaries and holidays like Valentine's Day, or going on vacation, or going on a weekend trip, or staying a night in a hotel. We start worrying about, oh my gosh, is he going to want sex? And that's the stress and the tension that we live in the marriage. And it creates a tension for our husband as well, obviously, of them wondering, when might we have sex again? Is she in the mood? Can I initiate? Is it safe? And there's a constant stress and tension in the relationship. We also then shut down. If we're shut down to sex, we shut down to any kind of physical affection, any kind of touch, hugging, kissing, holding hands, cuddling. So we shut ourselves down to that as well, because we're scared it's going to lead to sex. So then we're, again, avoiding any situations where we might even have to physically touch. We can't accept our husband's kindness and that stress and anxiety. We can't accept their kindness and thoughtfulness, because if he does something kind or thoughtful for us, we get upset of, well, you just want sex. You're doing this to get me to have sex. And your husband, as a good man, sure, he's hoping he's going to get lucky, but he also just wants to express his love and care for his wife. And is it so bad that he's hoping from a genuine, kind place of loving you and wanting to have sex with his wife, of like, maybe I'll get lucky? We make that so bad and turn them into Neanderthals, and they're not. They enjoy sex. We know that. And they want to have sex with their wife who they love. So when you re-engage with sex for yourself, then all of the stress, all of the anxiety goes away. Everything I just spoke about just completely goes away. And the coolest part is sex becomes it's not a problem anymore. It's a non-problem. It's just something fun and enjoyable you get to experience with your husband that allows you to care for yourself and show yourself love as a woman, so that you can share and express that love to your husband and your other loved ones in your life. Number 2, it allows you to create emotional intimacy in your marriage by opening up and being vulnerable to explore and share this part of you as a woman with your husband, who is right there waiting for you. And then number 3, it resolves all the sexual stress and anxiety around sex being a problem in the marriage, and it's no longer a problem. And you don't make it a big deal anymore. So how women do we get to this place? What's the solution? First is you have to move from camp victim, blaming external circumstances and people for why you are shut down to sex. There's no solution there. So you have to move from camp victim to what I call camp take responsibility, to recognize you are the problem in sex. That's what I had to do. You are the problem in sex. And if you know you are the problem, then you are empowered to be the solution instead of thinking your husband needs to do something differently or something needs to change about your past, which is impossible. So much easier for you to be the problem. And then the cool part, as I alluded to earlier, you don't have to work on sex. You don't have to work on sex. That makes it so much more complicated and so much more difficult. It's just learning how to build a healthy relationship with yourself, to feel good about who you are, and build a connection to yourself, which actually the process of that is going from camp victim to camp taker responsibility. And that's what I teach in my Woman's Happiness program, which you can find the link to schedule a consultation below in the description. And love yourself enough to overcome these insecurities, to get out of camp victim into camp taker responsibility. The solution for men is really important, and it can sound challenging, but men, you have to know there is nothing you can do to re-engage your wife with sex. You can go watch, I have a video, My Wife Has No Sex Drive. Here is the solution. There's all kinds of what I call RBA out there, really bad advice for good men. That there's something you're doing wrong, that you've created the issue around sex in your relationship. If your wife has shut down to sex, there's nothing you can do to re-engage her. And that is a good thing, because when you know that, you can take the focus off trying to get your wife to re-engage her by knowing she's the problem and she needs to be her own solution to re-engage with sex. So that the best thing you can do if you are choosing to stay in your marriage, the best thing you can do is to build yourself up and regain your strength and confidence as a good man, so you are not needy from your wife, which only makes the situation worse, and you focus on yourself and doing what you need to do to rebuild your strength and confidence and emotional resilience. And as you build that in yourself, and your wife can no longer weaken you, that's actually the best chance that you have, and you can have hope that your wife responds positively and steps up with you in the relationship to work on herself and re-engage. And if she doesn't, then you know you've done everything you can by working on yourself and no longer unknowingly giving your power away to your wife. You can know you've done everything to fight for your marriage and to fight for your wife and to fight for yourself. So if it doesn't work out, if you choose to leave, if she leaves, you know you've done everything you can and that you were not the problem. Not in a place of being a victim, but a place of seeing the reality of the woman that you married and not being trapped in the brainwashing that happens that you are the problem and it is something you did. And if you want a path to rebuild your strength and confidence as a good man, then I have a men's relationship course. And again, you can schedule a consultation below if you are interested in that. The link to schedule a consultation is the same for both the women's course and the men's course. So there we have it. Thank you guys so much. Please, if you haven't already, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. And just thank you guys for being such a wonderful audience and making this possible. A couple updates. I am in the process of finalizing an edit of one of my live shows. I'm going to start putting these in podcast form and posting them on Spotify and Apple. So I have a date set to release my first podcast episode of these shows on Wednesday this coming week. So I'll make an announcement about that on the communication page and also on X. I'm on X if you guys want to follow me over there as well. My husband and I made an agreement when I hit 100,000 subscribers on my channel. We're going to do a video together so you guys can get to know my husband, and we'll need some good questions for him. And I'm also in the works of a call-in show to support men and women in their marriages and work through some of these issues in a live call-in show. So those are all things that are coming that I'm very excited about. So I just wanted to update you guys on that. And I'm going to go ahead and come take a look over at the chat and see what's going on. And Eva's going to send me some questions So I will look there. Just saying hi to some folks. Hi, Luke. Always good to have you here. Seeing if there's anything else that stands out here. You guys are having, looks like some pretty nice civil conversations. And just come over here. Thanks for your patience as I look through this. Yeah. Oh, good, Johnny. I like that. Women in Camp Victim are continuously punishing themselves and don't realize it and then blame their man for it. Great synopsis. That is absolutely true. This is insane thinking this way. It's a vicious circle and torturous for everyone. It sure is. It sure is. So, okay. Let me come over here now. All right. Thanks, Evo. Got some questions. Yeah. Okay, good. So first question that pops up, and excuse me, guys, I need a sip of water. All right. What role does a woman's physiological, gynecological issues have on desire? So great question. From what I am talking about today, in my perspective, in my view, any issues going on with us physiologically or gynecologically around sex is an expression of our internal emotional state. And that it for me, it wasn't working on those issues that solved the problem. The fundamental root cause and origin of these issues and challenges is us being shut down to ourselves, numbed out to life, and numbed out to the experience of ourselves that then gets reflected in our different relationships. And the relationship that gets reflected most in is our marriage and our relationship with our husband. And part of that relationship is sex and our relationship with sex. So when we are numbed out to ourselves, numbed out to life, we effectively numb ourselves out to the experience of sex. And it's not only an emotional numbness, but then what happens physiologically is we also physically numb out to the pleasurable experience of sex and can cause then the symptoms that come along with that as well. That's my viewpoint and my perspective, because again, if it's the physical, I'm working on the symptoms when I see the root cause, and the root issue is emotional. Which, speaking of which, someone to go learn more about this from is my colleague Josie. She has a YouTube channel called also a Red Pill for Women, but it's Escaping the Alternative Health Matrix. Josie was someone who was very I met her at the same time that I started on this path about 10 years ago. She was really, really sick. She had 8 different autoimmune disorders and illnesses. And she learned to go from Camp Victim to Camp Take Responsibility through the work that we teach, and resolved all of her autoimmune illnesses. And so she teaches from the perspective that our body and the physical symptoms and conditions that we have, especially chronic illnesses and autoimmune illnesses, that the core issue is our emotional state. And so if you want to learn more about that in this perspective that I talked about, go check out her channel. She's got some really great content. All right, next question. Thank you so much, Evo. This makes it so much easier. Yeah. Okay. Question. Good question. Thank you, Dylan. Is there a way for me to tackle my wife's "what about this"? After watching some of Karen's videos, she asks, "What about your part in the marriage? What about hormones?" It goes on and on and on. Yeah. So really, really good question. So part of the purpose of sharing my videos, if you're a good man that has chosen to go that route, and I do have a video on that under the live section of how to share my videos with your wife, the purpose of doing that is to see the reality of the woman that you are married to, not her personally or uniquely or anything bad about her, just her as a woman. And as I teach, we all have these woman ways on a spectrum. If your wife is not coming around, is not wanting to look at these things, is staying in the "what about this" mentality, then, and that persists and she doesn't start to come around, then what you want to know is now you know the reality of your wife, and she is not willing to look at herself and look at these things and change. And the benefit to you as a good man in that is to be in the reality of, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with. So what's my plan forward? Am I going to stay in my marriage? It's really a values choice and what your values are, and there's no right or wrong of what that is for you personally. But understanding that now you have to accept, okay, this is my wife, and what's my decision moving forward? Am I staying? And if so, then I need to work on myself to rebuild my strength and confidence and learn to not unknowingly give my power away to my wife so she cannot emasculate me and weaken me as a man. And focus on the things you do love about her and the good things that are there. If you are still seeing those good things about your wife, which most good men do, or you decide I'm not willing to stay in a relationship with a woman who's going to continue to treat me this way, and you need to make a plan of what that looks like for you to be able to move forward. So that's the purpose of we have no control to change another. We can only change ourselves. And so if your wife isn't willing to look at herself after sharing my videos, then now you know the truth and you can stop trying to get her to see it, because you're wasting your energy and effort in that, and it just makes it worse, and she will put a bigger wall up and then put the focus on yourself and accepting who she is. All right. And guys, thanks for your patience as it helps me to read the question first before I just read it out loud so I can get my thoughts together. That's good. Thank you for the question, Sam. Karen, how often do you see the I don't feel safe card after the woman actually creates the unsafe environment herself? A lot. A lot. That's another good excuse that we have. I don't feel safe anymore. Ladies, we're creating the unsafe environment, but through our own emotional volatility. And again, my message and channel are for normal, everyday relationships and marriage, the kinds of issues and problems you would expect behind your neighbors to have behind closed doors, common everyday issues. I'm not talking about physically abusive or extreme dysfunctional or extreme abusive relationships. So if you're in a normal everyday relationship with the normal everyday problems, and you are a woman married to a good man, we create the unsafe environment because we have an unsafe environment within ourselves. It's everything we've been talking about today. That it's a reflection of how we feel, and we don't feel safe with ourselves because we make ourselves a mess. Yeah, a good question. I'm going to do a video on this soon. So thanks again, Dylan. I was just having this conversation with my wife. She says, well, Karen doesn't talk about hormones. What about that? So it's another, what about this question? I'm going to do a video on hormones soon. Not to say that we don't have hormonal fluctuations, but that we can still be in control of the experience of ourselves and still be kind and still enjoy sex, even when we are hormonal. And I've learned how to be in control of that experience of myself by having high emotional intelligence, to be in control of my emotional state, living in Camp Take Responsibility, not using hormones as an excuse and a get out of jail free card, which is what we do as women, and learning to be in control of ourselves even when we're having hormonal issues. Oh, bless you. Thanks, Mark, for sharing that. 8 years of a sexless marriage. Sadly and very unfortunately, you can see through the comments on my channel and videos, you are not alone. And that is very damaging, and a lot of work on yourself and who you are. Bless you. And thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, after 56 years of marriage, we've gone to roommates that just get along. Yeah, also very, very, very common. Thanks for the comment, Bill. Karen, thank you so much for this much needed information. Maybe someday women will be able to understand the difference between men and women. That's my hope, guys. And one of my favorite quotes is that I like to use, my mentor's dad used to say this, that even water wears through granite. So that's my purpose of being here, is to help the women who want to be woken up, to wake up like I did, and to also help good men out there struggling with these issues. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Question. I binge watch your live shows. I hope you write a book on these as chapters. That's a really, really great idea. Wow. Thank you for that. That's a really good idea, that my live shows could become different chapters in a book. Thank you. I will take that into consideration. Absolutely. So great, guys. I'm just going to take one last look over here, and then I am going to wrap up today. And again, a big thank you to Steve and Evo and Phil for doing an incredible job to keep the chat clean and respectful. Just thank you so much for that. I think it's really nice having moderators. And Salty Combat Diver, thank you so much for being here and continuing to be in the comments on the videos and reinforcing my message. And I really appreciate that so much. I'll have one more question. I just saw this pop up. Thanks, Lee. How is it that you understand men so well? So my mentor, David, who I've been working with professionally for about 10 years, and he's helped me a lot personally, because to be able to teach what I teach, I have to live it and be a true teacher and live from my experience. That's why I share about my experience, and I'm not coming from a judgmental place or hateful place to women at all, because I'm a woman and I've had these issues, and that's why I talk about what I talk about. But my mentor, David, is a good man, and he has taught me so much about the experience that good men have, and working on myself in my own marriage, and then having that self-awareness. And he designed the program for men, so that has helped me tremendously to be able to understand men as well as I can, and being a woman, and being married to a wonderful man, and seeing everything I teach, play out, and what happens when I just drop my walls and I'm kind and loving and just kind, and how well our marriage is. It's really, really quite simple. So that's how I would answer that. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up and get into my weekend and go join my husband. And I hope you guys have a nice weekend. Thank you so much for being here. Please remember to like the video if you haven't on your way out. And I look forward to seeing you guys next Saturday. Have a good one. Bye.